Do your videos and advice apply to teenagers?
My videos apply to human behavior in general, men and women, why people do what they do. That was something that I got into in my teenagers when I started studying self-help. I was trying to figure out why people do what they do. Initially, I was trying to figure myself out. Like when I was young, I was like, I wanted to be successful. I wanted to be rich. And then later, as I got into my 20s, it's like, how do I get better with girls? Why do some girls blow me off or tell me that they just think of me as a friend when I really like them? And they seem to be really into me at first, but instead of them becoming more interested, they became less interested really quickly. And then girls I didn't really wasn't that interested in at all would not leave me alone. That was one of the things that totally perplexed me and part of what put me on this journey of self-help and self-discovery was just trying to figure out, why do people do what they do? Why do some people that have every, because we just had a high school reunion recently, and I have friends that I love to death. They're awesome human beings, and they came from every advantage. They came from wealthy parents, literally born with a silver spoon in their mouths, and they just basically were like regular average people, didn't do anything accomplishing compared to like what their parents had done. And then you have other people that had every disadvantage, grew up in a bad neighborhood, came from a broken home, and yet they accomplish amazing things. And as Tony Robbins would say, is a success leaves clues. And for me, studying, like especially when I was young, getting into people's work like Tony Robbins and other self-help authors, I want to know, it's like, why is one person rich versus another person, doesn't really accomplish much or doesn't reach their full potential when they have every advantage in life? And I remember when I was a sophomore at Gibbons, I just grew up in a regular blue collar neighborhood. And I went to one of my friend's house for, stay there for the weekend. It was like a Friday night. And we I drove up to he lived with his uncle, and his uncle was a very famous eye doctor. And when the house was on the intercoastal, and I remember walking in the house, and there was this giant kitchen that was like, the kitchen was as large as our whole living room and family room and dining room combined. And then that opened up into an area that was all glass overlooking the intercoastal, and it was like 2 stories high in the middle of the room, and through the middle of it, it had like a catwalk that went from one end of the house to the other, and on each side of the house, the common area was 2-story ceilings basically with like a catwalk that connected the two, and you had bedrooms and rooms on either side at the top. And I was like, I thought that was the coolest house I'd ever seen in my life. And his uncle was Indian. He was a Sikh, so he had a turban on, and he had a beautiful wife, younger wife, blonde, and they were the nicest, sweetest, most gracious people. Like when I walked in there, they both came up, they looked me in the eye, they shook my hand. The mom gave me a hug. Like, can I get you something to eat? Can I get you something to drink? I mean, they were some of the friendliest, nicest, kindest people I had ever met. And at that time, that was like my first exposure to a family that was extremely wealthy. And they were just, like I said, the nicest people ever. They made me feel like part of the family. And just being there that weekend and hanging out with them, that was the whole reason why my parents sent me to that private school, was hoping that I would befriend people like that. And because what I realized was that they're just regular people like me. And because they were so regular and so down to earth, that gave me confidence that someday I could be successful like that. I could build a successful business, or I could have a really nice house, really nice cars, have a pretty girl to date. And just being around them helped me believe that it was possible. So the point being is that the things that I teach the fundamentals of the science of high achievement. And if you apply the things that I teach, you'll see that it works for you. And so, yeah, I mean, years ago, I had a woman that was, she was a high school principal, and her son was going to the high school. I think he was like a freshman or a sophomore. And so she wrote into me because she was a single mom, and praising me and praising my book and how it really helped her understand herself It helped her have a better relationship with her son. And also, she was teaching him the things that were in the book. And, at the end of her email, she was like, but I'm not teaching him any of the stuff about sex and seduction. I was like, you don't want your son hooking up with the prom queen or the captain of the cheerleaders? It's like, that would be great for him. That'd be great for his self-esteem. And it was a really cool email. And so here's a woman that was a principal of a high school, and she has the ability to influence the whole, I don't know how many thousands of kids were going to that particular high school. It's really cool. And there's a lot of teachers that I've talked to over the years, a lot of people in public schools, private schools that learn my work and are teaching it to their students. I've got people that have written in and told me that they're in like group therapy with a bunch of men, and the guy that's a therapist is using my book to teach them how to basically be a man and how attraction works and help them with their relationships. It's really cool to see that, because the things that I teach are universal. It's how human beings, how men and women interact, and what motivates people to do what they do. And it's the kind of stuff that my ultimate goal is that when I shuffle off this mortal coil someday, that things I teach are pretty much common sense and commonplace, and most people know these things. So it absolutely does apply.